Welcome to Unit 2, where we are going to explore the use of open educational resources, or OER for short. There are two parts to this unit. The first part is to work out what OER we need to address identified curriculum challenges in response to the needs of particular learners. In the second part, we shift to the core focus of this unit, which involves where we can find OER and how we can adapt them for reuse in our context. In any classroom, there will be some learners who struggle with particular topics, and there are some topics in the curriculum where most learners struggle. As teachers, we have experience in finding additional resources or creating supplemental resources to help to address these challenges. Very often, we have made photocopies or taken pictures from all rights reserved copyrighted textbooks for use in the classroom on the basis of the fair usage exemption for education. However, when we go online, we must be much more careful because there could be thousands of learners who access the copies of these resources, which would be in breach of copyright. So we need to find resources that we have the rights to use and reuse. We don't have to find resources for the entire curriculum, but rather we need to focus on finding resources to address issues in specific areas. A good starting point is to think about your own experience. You have been teaching your subject, maybe for a year or two, or even 10 years or more. You know which areas of the curriculum are problematic, and you know your learners. You know that a particular learner may be short-sighted, or another learner has a hearing impairment. And so one needs to find resources that will address these particular issues. The set of questions provided might help you to identify which aspect of the curriculum you need to find additional resources for. Obviously, from a copyright perspective, we must be very careful about which resources we share online with our learners, and so we're looking for resources that are licensed as open educational resources. They could be pictures, they could be textbooks, and they could be worksheets. There's a wide range of things that can be classified as open educational resources. Here's an example of a resource. It's a photograph of a Pacific gull taken by J.J. Harrison in 2009. A picture like this could be used in many different ways, for instance on a greeting card, in a calendar, on wrapping paper. However, it becomes an educational resource when a teacher develops a learning activity around it. In a similar vein, for example, a teacher might use a water bottle as a resource in the classroom to get the learners to think about where does the water come from? Is the bottle recyclable? So frequently, teachers take everyday resources and transform them into educational resources by developing associated learning activities. Now let's suppose you found an activity on the internet. If you decided you might like to use it, would you be legally able to do so? Strictly speaking, no, because in terms of the Berne Convention that most countries have signed up to, under the provision of copyright, any creative resource has a default all rights reserved copyright attached to it, even if it doesn't explicitly say so. This protects the resource from unauthorized copying. So when searching, we need to look for resources that are openly licensed. If you look at the bottom of the screen, you'll see that this resource has an open license. It says CC by SA, which means Creative Commons, Attribution, Share Alike. This is an example of one of the more open licenses. What that license allows me to do is, without paying fees, without asking for prior permission, I can reuse and adapt the resource for a different purpose. And so, for example, you see we have made a new picture by cropping the image, and we have changed the activity. This is allowed because it is openly licensed. We have acknowledged the original source, and we have shared who created the modified resource. This is the wonderful thing about openly licensed resources. We can retain copies, we can reuse them, and we can revise them. What is important here, and probably the most useful thing to come out in support of education in recent years, is the Creative Commons licensing scheme. When you work through the slideshow in your own time, click on the link at the bottom of the screen and you'll be able to find out more about Creative Commons licensing. There are 6 Creative Commons licenses which provide different permissions. CC BY means you use the resource but must attribute the copyright holder. CC BY non-commercial use means that you can't make a profit from the resources. CC BY ND means that you cannot make any derivatives. You must use the source as it is. CC BY SA means share alike. This is the Commonwealth of Learning's preferred license. You can make changes to the resource, but you are required to share back the modified resource under the same license. And then you get combinations. So for instance, CC BY NCSA means you must attribute the original author, no commercial use, and you must share alike. We don't particularly like the 2 licenses that use the no derivatives restriction for educational purposes because they don't allow us to make changes. Very often, when we find openly licensed resources on the internet, we need to adapt them slightly for a better fit for our target learners. You can think of the 6 CC licenses as a continuum. On the one end, we have the least restrictive resources that are in the public domain. For example, the works of Shakespeare, where copyright has expired, or public policy, which is sometimes dedicated to the public domain. The default all rights reserved copyright is on the opposite end of the continuum. Even if there is no copyright symbol, legally you must assume that all rights reserved copyright exists and act accordingly. One of the major thinkers in the area of open education is David Wiley. He talks about the 5 R's of open content, the right for us to retain after we have downloaded something, the right to reuse it for different purposes, the right to revise it, the right to remix it by combining it together with other things, and the right to redistribute it to new audiences. When you work through the slideshow in your own time, click on the link to find out more about the 5 R's. The first activity that you will do when you work through this slideshow in your own time is designed to help you to find open content, that is, content that is openly licensed. The guide will take you through 8 steps to find content that will meet your particular curriculum purposes and address the needs of your particular learners. The second activity will focus on how you can take the resources you find and build them into an online lesson. We recommend that once you've gone through this exercise, you share what you have learned from this activity in the corresponding discussion forum, and you get feedback from your peers and from your mentors. In the third activity for Unit 2, you will explore ways in which OER can be adapted for a better fit with learners' needs and contexts of learning. You will find more information about open educational resources by clicking on the hyperlinks provided in the slides. And you'll also find links to our guide to open educational resources, policy issues and quality issues, etc. We also have developed a set of quality guidelines for open educational resources. If you click on the relevant link, you can download it for free and access it as needed. We also have a course on understanding open educational resources that is self-paced. If you'd like to learn more, you can click on the link and register for this online course. You might like to explore some of the OER available in the regional OER repository recently created in the link provided. Over the next few months, we will build national versions of this on which countries can share OER linked directly to their school curriculum. There are many factors that contribute to make learning in the online space more effective. The critical factor is that teachers and learners need access to relevant content. A quick recap. In the first leg of our journey, we asked you to think about activities to guide learners in using existing content like their prescribed textbooks. In Unit 2, we explored the use of open educational resources to supplement the textbook with additional guidelines and resources for selected curriculum areas. The second leg of our learning journey will focus on supporting learners at a distance. This will be discussed in Unit 3 of the course. And then finally, the third leg is to design appropriate assessment instruments and to provide feedback for learners. This will be discussed in Unit 4. We hope that you will find the first two units useful and that you're looking forward to working on Unit 3.